Good evening. Good evening. I'm going to apologize in advance. I know I just logged on and it's just sending out that notification, but I apologize in advance. I think one of them love bugs flying around in here. So I may have to swing a couple of times. I may have to be swinging. So my apologies in advance. But we'll kick off in about a minute and a half or so, maybe a little less than that. If you haven't caught our last week's broadcast, of course, it's here on my Facebook page and YouTube page. So no matter which one you're watching on, please feel free to avail yourselves. And of course, it's directly connected to this one. This is part 2, as you can see. But we're looking forward to our discussion tonight. And I say discussion because it's really intended to have interaction. But I've been told by more than a few people they are a little bit uneasy, or they want to talk, but they're afraid to dominate the conversation. As I said last week, you can't dominate the conversation because you're typing, I'm talking, and it's up to me to respond or not respond. So you can't really dominate the conversation. That one doesn't quite work. But certainly, if you comment, that does give others the opportunity to do the same. And we hope that you'll be encouraged to do so. That said, it is 9 Central Standard Time, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. And if you've watched any of my broadcasts on Thursdays or really anytime, I like to get started and get into it so I can get out of the way. Our topic, which I like to post a pre-topic discussion, put a little bit on the video, on the broadcast, but our topic is pretty straightforward. It's pretty clear. What I called discussing the D's. And again, divorce, depression, desperation, drama, dating. It doesn't matter what order you put them in. We've already looked at dating. We've looked at drama. A little bit of desperation. We'll start with desperation tonight. But the key is looking at all of these D's or D words in respects to community. Most of the topics you see me do on Thursdays are about community. And as I said last week, largely because, not that when I started doing this over a year ago, community was my thought process. But as I began to do this, community became the obvious way to go in light of I started doing these broadcasts last year when we were in quarantine. Okay. So been a little over a year that I started doing the broadcast. And so we're dealing with all these topics, and we've dealt with topics about death and you name it, in connection in some way to community. However, we're not just exclusively looking at these things from a community standpoint, because as we've already talked about, our working definition of community, many times we've gone over this, community is built up of people. Community is not built up of houses and cars. Community is not built up of places of worship. Those are places where the people in the community go. But community is really about the people. And community is not just simply your neighborhood necessarily, even though you may focus your attention on your particular neighborhood. Your community also includes your social media community to whatever degree you engage them. To whatever degree you engage them is not what we get into. You engage your community from the people in your house. If you live with at least one other person, that is a community. It's a community of 2. And then, of course, from there. So however many people you engage, however briefly or for whatever period of time, that's essentially your community. So there's no such thing as a community of one. That's just one person. But a community it has to be at least 2 or more people, right? Okay, just got to get that in. But we're looking at all of these particular topics on the basis of community. So I can see the comments here. For those who are on Facebook, if you're on, so I can see your comments on Facebook and see who's commenting on YouTube. I can actually see you on my recording device, my broadcasting device, so I can see those comments. I can't type a response, but I can see them. All right. So that being said, let's dive right back in. I want to go back to depression. And if you didn't watch last week, I won't go over what I said about desperation. Excuse me. Desperation connected to dating and drama. I won't go there. I want to deal with desperation, however, in and of itself. In and of itself. As a matter of fact, let me get my definition here. I actually forgot. All right. A state of despair. This is what desperation means. A state of despair. Typically one which results in rash and extreme behavior. Let me do that again. A state of despair. When a person is desperate, they're a person who is in a state of despair. A state of, here's some synonyms: hopelessness, distress, anguish. Okay, and then there's plenty of other synonyms I won't get into. Let me go to Merriam's. I don't always go there, but let me go to Merriam's. Merriam's and Webster's dictionary says a couple of different definitions. Loss of hope and surrender to despair. A state of hopelessness leading to rashness. Again, very similar definition. A state of hopelessness, a state, a disposition. Catch that? Of hopelessness leading to rashness or poor choice. Now, we did a whole broadcast on bad decisions. Then we did something about bad decisions kind of connected to some of our other topics. So we're not going to get into the resulting rash, bad decision. I want to deal with that state of hopelessness in connection to community. Wow, can you see it? So not just because we use the D word, desperate, often when we're talking about, and I hate to say this, but typically dealing with a woman who wants to get into a relationship. But that's not really, we're almost doing the word of disjustice when we do that, because when you hear the definition, that's anyone in a state of hopelessness, anyone. And considering we are still almost 2 years into a pandemic with, well, you know, I understand this has been made political and I hate this, but also including global warming. I think it's pretty hard to deny the effects of global warming, since I live in the South and we had a week of snow almost a year ago. So it's going to be a little difficult to convince me global warming isn't true. But that aside, don't want to get off into that. Let's stay focused. So despair is a state or a disposition of hopelessness. So whether it's a man or a woman who feels hopeless to get into a relationship, or a man or a woman or a boy or a girl who feels hopeless in terms of they have bad parents who are not connected, guardians, or whatever the case may be. A sense of hopelessness on a job, hopelessness in regards to a health crisis, and you feel like the diagnosis is so bad that you feel a state of hopelessness. Desperate is not just simply about somebody who really wants to get married. It's not just about that, even though, again, we have a tendency to use the term desperate or I'm not desperate when it comes to relationships. The fact is, for those who say, who I really want to be in a relationship or whatever the case may be, but I'm not desperate, well, by definition, if you are feeling like it's the moment you say something to this effect, I just don't think it's going to happen for me, you are desperate. Stop that nonsense. Stop that. It's like the word is taboo, but the sentiment is not. That makes no sense. So I really feel that, Gabe, but I don't want anybody to use the word, so I'll lie to myself and others in my community. Now, again, desperation is the state of hopelessness. It doesn't mean necessarily that it has to end in a rash decision. It doesn't mean that you have to make a bad decision. It doesn't mean that. However, you can't deny the definition. So let me just say, since you're in my social media community, we got to stop the madness. We got to stop lying to ourselves. We're using the definition in our description. But then when somebody says, you sound desperate, I'm not desperate. I can live without a relationship. I'm not desperate. I don't care if I ever get married again. Well, believe it or not, that goes to the other part of the definition, which results in a rash or extreme behavior where you're just going to throw the whole thing away. Now, you may resolve at some point, you know what, I'd rather be single. That's a pretty nice, clear, concise decision based on a set of factors, which will include emotion. But when you go, this last relationship didn't work, I'm so tired of trying, hopelessness, I just give up. I just give up. I quit. I give up. That, ladies and gentlemen, is by definition desperate. And you're making a rash or extreme decision. So let's just get that clear right off the top. Stop lying to yourself and to others, and don't stop lying to me. Now, I've been single over 6 years, going on 6.5 years in November, and I've had this conversation with many, and yes, mostly women, because men are the pursuer. And it's amazing to me how many women, the moment you go, yes, like they want to just claw your whole head off. Stop. The fact is, if you're starting to feel hopeless because it doesn't seem to be turning into a relationship, you are desperate. That's just the definition. Don't get mad at Merriam's and Webster's dictionary. Don't get mad at the person who is properly identifying your disposition. That's a proper identification. Okay, enough of that. But the word desperation or desperate in community can have major ramifications, not even talking about relationships. Because notice rash or extreme behavior. Now, I'm gonna bring this up. Stay with me. Don't get mad at me. Stay with me. January 6th, we had a host of individuals who were encouraged, who were incited, and were told, let's be honest, a bunch of lies. Now, I don't care if you're GOP, Republicans, or Democrats. I'm not talking about that. But let's just be honest. I watched the riot myself. There is no denying that many of those people were not just simply there to have some fun at the Capitol or just to be observant. They were there because they were inspired to have a sense of hopelessness in regards to the election, in regards to the state of the country. And because of their sense of hopelessness or desperation, unfortunately, rash, extreme behavior occurred and people died. Do you understand the magnitude? Oh, I got a lot of examples. Stay with me. Are you beginning to immediately recognize the potential community reality of people being desperate? Does it strike you that if people are dealing with desperation, a state or disposition of hopelessness, that things can actually get dangerous? Take a man who's married to a woman and feels like she's pulling away, right? And he's getting concerned. He's starting, no matter what he seems to be doing, whatever that may be, he's feeling a sense of hopelessness that the relationship will survive. Okay. And if he is not careful, that state, that disposition of hopelessness can lead him to something like this. If I can't have you, no one can. One of the dispositions or one of the states of a stalker is, and what ends up driving them to extremes is desperation. When they realize that they're not going to get in return what they believe is a right feeling or sentiment. And I'm not saying they're right. Please hear me. I'm not saying they're right at all. But I want you to understand, and a stalker operates within a community. So this sentiment of desperation can be huge. It can be huge. How about, hey, I told you I got plenty of examples. How about a person who's being bullied? I'm not just talking about a child. I mean a grown person. On their job, they're being harassed and they're beginning to feel a sense of hopelessness. I just watched the broadcast, just broke my heart, honestly, about Hillsong Church. That's based in Australia, but there's obviously several locations, including in New York. And I watched this broadcast about a couple of young ladies who were raped. Who were groped, and one was raped. And they are in school because Hillsong Church, very large church. But if somebody loves their music, hey, it is what it is. I do have songs of theirs that I like and that my place of worship performs. But I'm not talking about songs. I'm talking about human lives. And those young ladies were mistreated, mishandled, groped, dogged out by the ministry, by the administration. And one lady was flat out forcibly raped by a gentleman that she trusted, of course, and spent the next few years in both cases, I think 4 years in one case, 3 years in another, just trying to piece their lives back together. And desperation clearly was one of the dispositions that they had. They weren't desperate trying to get into a relationship. No, they were desperately just trying to survive the emotional trauma. They felt hopeless behind the fact that this big, huge ministry that spans around the globe just dismissed them outright. And it wasn't until they went on social media community that they accessed their social media community. Let me say this again. For those of you who love to post your memes and your statements about Facebook ain't nothing, social media ain't nothing, and if you're just living by social media, you don't have no life, you might want to stop that nonsense. The moment you share a video about somebody being hurt, shot, stabbed, mistreated, you just turn social media into a real place. After all these years, Facebook's been around 20 years at least, almost 20. And most of us have been on some kind of form of social media, MySpace. You're sharing pictures of your sons and your daughters on Daughter and Son Appreciation Day. You're taking pictures of your vacations. You're sharing all kind of hurts and pains, and yet still calling social media a non-existent, non-important place because somebody checks you about something that you post. So then you go, hey, it ain't no big deal. But then 2 posts before that was a post of you and your children. That's no big deal. We're not supposed to care. We're not supposed to click like. We're not supposed to say, "Aw," when you put a picture of your grandbabies. Come on. You can't have it both ways. Soapbox. Sorry about that. So the reality of it is, if it wasn't for this place that's of no consequence called social media, they would not have gotten their situations heard. The police would have never been called, and there would have been no prosecutions. None. None. There have been cold case files that have been reopened and solved because of social media. Oh, yes, it's a place for frivolousness as well, but you can't dismiss the importance of it. People have become millionaires and billionaires through social media. Anyway, the discussion is about desperation. It's about a sense of hopelessness. And now here I am watching this expose, watching this documentary, about a 19, 20-minute documentary. You can easily look it up, Hillsong Church, and I can't remember the exact name. Contact me and I'll send it to you if you'd like to watch it. And I'm watching this, and I sent it out to a couple of trainees that I'm working with in ministry and pastoring, and to give them some insight on how we need to proceed in that arena. But understand this, desperation for sure. Now, I applaud those ladies for not doing something rash. I applaud those ladies, but think about what they've been through. I just, a couple of weeks ago, well, a few weeks ago, if you go back to the original broadcast, did a thing on sexual deviance, right? And the children and the adults who are living with it in our communities. Do you not believe that some of these people are not struggling with a sense of hopelessness or desperate? See, if we say another word, maybe it'll put it in perspective for us. Because when we say desperation, when we say desperate, what we really mean is hopeless. What we really mean is hopelessness. Some of you are so afraid of the word desperate and desperation that you don't even bother to look up some synonyms and realize that you are desperate. And that what's happening is, now let me look at the other side of this, okay? I looked at the victims, let's look at the other side. Some of us who are feeling hopeless, we don't get any help for our hopelessness because we don't want to acknowledge it. So the people in our communities, whether our social media communities or our everyday moving around communities, people in our homes, people in the places where we go, part of the reason why we can't get any help for our sense of hopelessness, for our state of hopelessness, is because, and we did a whole broadcast on this, we don't want to tell the truth. We don't want to be honest that we are, whether it's about relationships or about what's going on our jobs or what we're dealing with in our health. Maybe we, excuse me, maybe we have a child who is doing all kind of craziness, right? But we don't want to talk about it because, again, we don't want anybody to know we're desperate. So in our communities, we can't get the help we need. And look, I got to do it. I got to do it. If I don't put my foot in my mouth at least once, I have failed. The reality of it is, this is especially for religious people. Especially. Because you got this name it, claim it, decree it, declare it. I live by faith, Gabe, so I don't tell no truth. Oh, I know you don't say it that way, but I've been doing this a long time. A long time. I'm heading towards the 29th anniversary of this thing called ministry. And I've had way too many conversations with people who don't want to tell the truth about the fact that they are in a desperate situation. They don't want to tell the truth. And yet, when they look at the, just give me a minute for those who may not be believers. When they look at the scripture, there's a woman that we love to preach about and we love to hear about who had an issue of blood, right? Issue of blood, I believe 18 years. And she was desperate. She had spent all her substance. She was desperate. And she made a decision that was in that time frame in the 1st century AD was classified as extreme. Her choice to push through that crowd, though she was bleeding. Though she was bleeding, she had an issue of blood. She was bleeding. She pushed through that crowd, something she was not supposed to do, just to get to Jesus. So desperation will often cause extreme behavior. And here's why this subject is so important from a community standpoint. Because as we live around each other and as we engage each other, we end up having to deal with the, watch this word, the drama of the results of the desperation. Let me rephrase it. What happens is, if we get people who don't want to discuss it, people who don't want to engage, who don't want to be honest, about their sense of hopelessness, who don't want to be honest about their feelings of desperation, eventually they make some ultra rash move. They make some ridiculous move that their family, their friends on social media and off are sitting there scratching their head, and everybody's going, we didn't see this coming. We didn't see the warning signs. Well, let me just say this. Why everything got to get the warning signs? Why everybody got to be gifted in warning signs? Come on, man. Not everybody has the ability in our communities to track the warning signs. Well, did they say anything? No. Did they do anything? And now people in the community are scratching their heads, crying and mad and frustrated with themselves and frustrated with the person who just did some wild, crazy thing because they spent 10 years, 5 years, 20 years choosing not to say something. They were in a long-standing relationship of abuse, and they let the church tell them, or their pastor, their religion tell them something that's not even in the Bible, that you can't leave that man or woman who is misusing you and beating you and cheating on you and spending all your money and doesn't want to talk to you, doesn't want to cuddle with you, doesn't like you at all, but you got to stay married. And the feeling of desperation, of hopelessness sets in, and eventually you blow their brains out. You up and just move to another state. You don't tell anybody. You're poor. You're living on the street because you're desperate, but you wanted to get out of the marriage that you didn't want to tell anybody about, because you were more worried about embarrassment. I should do E-words, and that's on the top of my list. E-words, because you didn't want to tell the truth. You didn't want anybody to know that you were desperate. So then you go so long that it ends up turning into a rash, extreme behavior and actions. You start talking out the side of your neck. You start doing all kinds of extreme things. As a matter of fact, and this is my last example, and it is a real one, and it is unfortunate, but a lady here in the Shreveport, Bossier area threw her children, infant, I believe, and a 5-year-old off the bridge at Lake Shore. And of course, one is in critical condition and the other has died. She was in a state of desperation. And even if you say, Gabe, she probably had a mental situation, the mental situation drove her desperation. I don't care what the reason is behind being desperate. When you live in a community, and I suspect that woman had a community of people around her. They may not have known her well, but she had a community of people around her. So when I was told by a dear friend, Gabe, did you hear about the lady who threw her children over, 2 or 3 children over the bridge at Lake Shore? I was devastated. And there I am at the gym for the last week now, Monday and Wednesday. And there it is I'm not going to say the lady's name. You can look it up if you want. Her sense of desperation, and maybe a mental condition drove her to do something rash, to do something extreme. Ladies and gentlemen, those who are in my social media community, please hear me. I say this stuff almost every week. Please, if you know you are desperate, if you know you are feeling hopelessness, if you know that you are starting to reach this point right here, where you've had it up to here, please don't just stay there. If you don't contact me, contact somebody. I'm begging you as a person in your social media community, please don't just keep going. As a matter of fact, another friend of mine asked me to do something about counseling, and this coming month, I don't have it in front of me right now, but this coming month, we are going to do a whole broadcast on counseling. Matter of fact, let me look it up. It is going to be October 28th. And we're entitling that chat, You Need Help. You Need Help. And we're going to talk about counseling. I mean, certified counselors. We're going to talk about it. Okay. So tune in on the 28th. We got some great topics also coming up. The M words, the M's of life, which is going to be exciting. We're going to talk about on the 14th, engaged again, which might be a little bit tough for some. We're going to talk about married. Let's stay together. Why? As a matter of fact, next week. We got some great topics coming up. So now we've hit desperation. We got a couple of more left. Divorce and depression. Divorce and depression. Now, I'm going to really hit this individually next week when we deal with married. Let's stay together. Why? I'm going to hit that hard next week. But let me say a few things about divorce in particular. Now, next week, we're going to look at it from the standpoint of those who are married and choosing to stay together. And we're going to look at why they may be doing that, and society and community and all those things. But I want to look at it from the standpoint of divorce. I have said openly on this broadcast, I've said openly on my social media and my posts, I have been married and divorced more than once. Now, it's ironic. A dear friend of mine, he told me his mom brought it up, as a matter of fact, and I won't get into the details, a month or so ago, a couple of months ago, I guess now, as some kind of mark against me because I've been married more than once. And you know, him and I just kind of laughed about it because we both realized that, one, his mom doesn't really know me, though I've known his family for the better part of my entire life. But the reality of it is, we just laughed. Divorce is something that does enter life, even for Christians, whether we want to admit it or not. Last statistic I heard, Christian marriages, or Christians who are in marriage, there's no such thing as a Christian marriage, but Christians who are in marriage are hitting at about 40-50%. 40-50%. So understand, and again, we'll go deep next week, but understand, divorce is a real topic in terms of community. Divorce is a real topic. And what's ironic, let me connect a couple of these things together, because people, particularly who are in religious relationships, religion has a tendency, let me say religion, not Christianity. Religion has a tendency to embarrass people. Part of how and I know those who are not a part of religions are going to love this, but just stay with me though. Part of how the religious societies of this world are able to seemingly boast such great numbers like marriage and things like that, and I'm just going to be honest, I'm going to be transparent, is because, particularly if you go back a couple of generations to my grandparents, is because of what's called coercion. I'm going to just get real with you for a second, okay? I'm going to have some Christians who ain't going to like it. Come for me. Come for me. Act like I don't know. Come for me. Come for me. Because I know grandparents. My grandparents were together for decades. But I also know for a fact that they fought. Oh, they stayed together. I'm going to get into this next week. But they also fought. And I don't mean some little light spats about what we eat for dinner. You never know. No, I mean there was some get down and get dirty with it. I know for a fact that many of my parents' friends who are at the tail end of the baby boomers, still together, 40, 50, 60 years. But you're talking about can't stand each other. And unfortunately, because of religious, societal situations, social religious dogmas and teachings, basically, you don't want to be embarrassed. Remember, I did a broadcast about what happens here stays here when we talked about sexual deviance, right? And because many of those couples came along, and again, my grandparents' children, which would be my parents, were told, hey, you stay together, you stay together. The reality of it is that you stick and stay, even though you got tons of drama. You got some extremely unhealthy drama. And that drama leads to desperation. It leads to hopelessness. You got these long-standing marriages that have led to all kind of hopelessness. People are blown away. Listen to me. Come on, somebody tell me the truth tonight. Somebody speak to me. You know somebody who was married for 30 years and got a divorce? You know somebody who was married for 20 years and got a divorce? You know. See, that's community. If you know those people, that's because they're in your community. They might be your own family members. They may very well be you. Had a bunch of kids, got a bunch of grandkids. Now, none of my marriages were long-standing. None of them. No disrespect, but they weren't long-standing. Long-standing to me is 25 years and up. I know, and you say, well, Gabe, I've been married 20 years. Well, no disrespect. But since my parents have been married 51 years, I can't really count 20 years. You got to at least get 25 years. Come on, 25. Come on. Come on, man. Come on. Because you're supposed to be together till death do you part. But in the last, 10, 15 years, especially in the last year since I've been single, I have had way too many conversations with, it's one thing when people have been married for a short period of time and they get a divorce. That's bad. Divorce is bad. But when they get a divorce and was only married for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, even 10 years, that's 10 years kind of rough, but I get it. Not, but when you've been talking about 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 50 years, and they get a divorce, you got to think about what that means. If they had kids, you got to think about the fact that if they've been married, let's say 50 years, and they get a divorce, they probably have grown grandkids. You understand? Do you understand the depth of their community? Do you understand? Do you understand the community impact? Because they were probably, after 50 years, being held up as the couple of all couples. They were probably being looked at by the generations that followed them, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. I have a niece and a nephew who are old enough to have children. 31 years old, 29 years old. They don't have children, but they're old enough to have children. My parents can have great-grandchildren right now. And the fact is, if my parents were to, and again, I'm not here to speak for them, but if they were to part after 51 years, the level of community devastation would be tremendous, not just for their children and grandchildren, but for the people who are in their religious community. Now, they have a right to do what they want to do. I'm not here to tell them or you that they can't make their own decision. And for those of you who have been in those, or who may have been, in that 20, 30, 40, 50-year relationship, and you got out of there for whatever your reason, I'm not here to talk down at you at all. I'm not even here to talk bad to you. I'm here to tell you that divorce is not just the two people who are in it, no matter how long you were married. It is every single person who cares about you. They are impacted to one degree or another by your choice to get married and to get divorced, which is why when you get divorced, it gets put in the newspaper unless you tell them, don't do it. Death certificates, newspaper. Marriage certificates. Why? Because it is announcing to your you didn't even know it, did you? Because what they would do is announce to your community, to the legal community in terms of bills and things of that nature, they would be able to see that you are no longer together. As a matter of fact, watch this. Watch this. This is why many people are intentionally, for one reason or another, I should say, choosing not to actually go through the legal divorce. Now, I made a distinction there I'm not going to get into. Check me later and ask me why. But they choose not to go through the legal process. They've been separated for years. I've been single for years, and I've come across people who flat out told me, Gabe, we haven't been together, looking for a relationship, but I'm still legally married. I've had many people tell me that. Many people. So, Gabe, I just want you to know up front, hey, man, I'm still legally married. I'm like, oh, okay. So understand, part of that is because some of the legal financial ramifications of divorce. In other words, the community impact, the societal impact if they go through the divorce. And yes, some of those people are right here on my Facebook page, might be listening to me now. Obviously, I'm not going to give anybody's name. It's not how we get down. But understand why. There's a community reality. There's a community reality. Now, you can say whatever you want for those who've been together for 417 years and you feel like that's not right. They're still able to enjoy some of the things we enjoy and we're still together and we're still, hey, you make all the judgments you want. I'm just telling you that divorce doesn't just have an impact on the people who go through it. It has an impact on the community at large to one degree or another. On children, on grandchildren, on great-grandchildren, on bills, your car insurance, especially for men, can go up dramatically. Trust me, I know. I've been there, obviously. If you're in a religious community, the religious community will often feel the ripples because if you got friends on both sides of the aisle, you share friends together, all of a sudden you have to make decisions about, are you going to try to maintain those friendships? You may lose friendships. You got to understand, divorce is a community thing. Oh, maybe not the nuts and bolts. Let me give you another reason why divorce has community ramifications. If somebody in the marriage has an extramarital affair and the relationship ends on the basis of that kind of, I've been there, and the relationship ends on the basis of the extramarital. You have to understand that's community even to the point of the reason why the marriage is over, why a divorce takes place. Am I making myself clear? We have to stop trying to live in this thought of isolation, this thought. You're not living in isolation. You're not a hobbit. Stop trying to act like a hobbit. Stop trying to act like you live in a hole in the ground. Oh, I know, because we're coming to that last one, depression. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. But some are so worried about embarrassment, as we talked about last week, so worried about drama, that you are literally trying to bury your head in the sand. You are literally trying to bury your head in the sand. And look, the reality of it is, it just can't happen. I apologize for those who may be on my YouTube page who are seeing that comment. They have those who are spam, people who do spam, and we just got rid of them. Do apologize once again for those comments. YouTube is dealing with the same issues as everybody else, spam posters and all that. So the reality of it is, and I hopefully took care of it for you. So the reality of it is, because a divorce is community. I hope I said it enough. Divorce is community. Divorce is not just a man, woman, or whatever the particular. I understand. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I go man and woman. Divorce is not just what this man and this woman go through, especially if you have children, grandchildren, etc. And you can say it is, especially if you have joint friends, especially if you have bills, joint bills. And so now you got to deal with bill collectors. You got to deal with doctors appointments, and you got children in the home. I have a 12-year-old. My son's mother and I are not together. We have to coordinate with each other. We have to work together. Now, you know, I appreciate all the compliments, and I imagine she may get them as well. Oh, it's so good that you guys work so well together. You know why the people in our communities are saying that, in our separate communities are saying that? Because divorce, because separation, because pulling apart has community implication. That's why they're saying it. That's why they're saying it, ladies and gentlemen, because there's nothing we can say but to admit that divorce has community implication. Let's talk about the flip, and then we'll do depression and get out of the way. The reality of it is, The flip side to this is the impact of community on relationships that can lead to divorce. I already mentioned extramarital, but also rumor mills, gossipers, right? People who want to get all in your business, which is why I understand on the flip side, people try to keep so much private, even though it is often a detriment. I get why people want to try to keep it private, because when you want to reach out to your community, you will potentially run into people who will will create problems. You will run into people who will create issues. You will run into people who will create circumstances for you that often become untenable. You'll run into people who will often create circumstances that are difficult, and they end up having such an impact on your marriage that you end up going through divorce. Oh, I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna get in trouble, but I like to do it. I like to do it. Ready? In-laws. 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 Oh, ain't nobody gonna talk to me tonight, but I'm gonna talk to you. In-laws, brothers and sisters. In-laws, men and women. In-laws, Facebook friends. I can give you several accounts. Obviously, I don't tell people's personal business, but I can give you some generic ones that will probably hit somebody close to home. I'm sure out of the 1,000 people that 1,000 Facebook accounts I'm connected to right now, just added somebody literally as we speak. I'm 100% sure there is at least one divorcee on my page who is divorced because of in-laws, in part. I'm making a safe bet that at least one. Ain't nobody gonna talk to me. And I understand, because your in-law might see it. I don't know. But I'm pretty confident that there is at least one divorced man or woman on my page right now, maybe even watch it on YouTube, that if they're honest, at least part reason why they're divorced is because mama-in-law, dada-in-law, some cousin on the other side, some brother, some sister-in-law, some uncle-in-law, auntie-in-law wouldn't mind their daggone business. They invited themselves in, or they were asked advice on something, and they took that to mean that they were supposed to run their mouth about all the other stuff that nobody asked them about. Oh, I ain't gonna stop at in-laws. I'm gonna go on to nosy pastors and nosy religious leaders. Yeah. I could talk about it. Because they wouldn't mind their business. I know for a fact there's a pastor I heard with my own ears, one of my sister's old bosses, because she was a music pastor at his in his ministry, who said his job was to go all up in your business. His job, if you all in the bar, his job, or the club, he was supposed to go get you out the club. That's what he said. I heard him say it. That's a part of his job. Now, let me say, as a pastor, that is not a part of our job. That is not a part of our job. Period. And if I'm your pastor and I find out you in the club, I'm not going in that club to come get you. And if I was at church, I'd let the church say amen. So understand me, brothers and sisters, men and women, Facebook friends. On the flip side, divorce can also be, and in some cases will often be, the product or the byproduct of people in the community not staying out. Now, Gabe, yeah, but you can't really blame them because the husband or the wife let them in. Oh, I'm not exempting them. I'm coming to that. The reality of it is, if the community can have that kind of impact, when I say community, that even includes children. Now, many of us are of an age where we have children. Now, my son is 12 and I'm 47. Obviously, I was 35 when he was born. But the reality of it is, many of my friends whom I went, or acquaintances, whatever the case may be, I went to high school with, have grown kids. Not only grown kids, have grandkids my son's age. Let's just get real about it. And the fact is, if you're single and you end up getting married, or you were single and you got married, and your grown kids or your grandkids or your whatever decide they want to run interference in your marriage in some form, you can find. Now, yeah, granted, I get it, Gabe, but it's no, you can't blame them. You got to blame the two people that's in the relationship. You passing the buck. You passing the buck. I ain't passing nothing. I'm telling you that you cannot be dismissive of the drama, there it is, that was created by those in-laws, by those religious leaders, by the people in your community. Some bestie who keep running their mouth. Some bestie who keeps hitting on your husband or your wife. Some best friend who gawking at your wife, gawking at your husband, stirring the pot, trying to get you out. I got an acquaintance who lives in Fort Worth. We chatted a few times, and so I finally asked, hey, so why did your marriage end? She said, Gabe, we used to be together all the time. I said, oh, really? Oh, cool. She said, yeah, we were together. We went everywhere together. Loving relationship. He was a little younger than me. It was all good. But his friends kept telling him, man, you henpecked. His friends kept telling him, man, look, man, she got you, man. She got you where she wants you. And that big dummy, very beautiful woman, that big dummy ended up leaving the relationship behind his friends. And I'm sitting there like, that's the dumbest. I'm not saying she was perfect in any way. I'm just saying you don't leave a relationship with someone you like spending that much time with behind what your friends are saying because they jealous, because they envious, because they like to stir the pot. I can say more. I'm going to leave that one. That was getting good to me right there. I'm going to leave that one. Finally, depression. Depression. This one is huge. And obviously, I already told you what I believe the 27th, 28th, we're going to do a topic on counseling. But let me say this from a community standpoint and why I believe we need to look at depression as a community issue and not just an individual person issue. I know many people personally, I've obviously talked about this, who have been diagnosed with depression, whether it be clinical or whatever the case may be. I'm not going to get into the particulars with them because I know that's a very sensitive subject, so I'm not going to do that. I have respect because I have family members who are close to me who have been diagnosed with depression. What is important to me, and I want to make sure I convey this, is that, and I have said this directly to some of them, especially one in particular, that you cannot hope to manage your depression in a bubble. Here I am again. Yes, not everyone can help you with your depression. It's such a delicate situation. And if people don't have the proper training, they don't have the proper empathy, they don't have the proper sympathy, then they're not going to be able to help you to manage your depression. If you're dealing with clinical, you're dealing with depression that is managed by medication. Sometimes you may be so bad off, you definitely need the community. Somebody may have to administer your medication to you. So you can automatically begin to see how important depression is from a community standpoint. Look, if you're not getting my point, hopefully you should by now, but let me make it abundantly clear. I am not an advocate of living this life alone. I do live, relatively speaking, by myself. I have my son 3 days a week. I see him just about pretty much every day. But I see him, I have him, he's with me, physically living here, sleeping here, eating here, 3 days a week. And because he's so young, that's going to be the case at least another 6.5 years. Easy. 6 years, 6.5 years, maybe more. So I'm not alone. I'm not lonely in that sense. Now, obviously, he's not a grown person, so we don't have grown conversation in terms of subject matter necessarily. And if anybody knows me, they know why I'm saying necessarily. But anyway, So I'm not going to try to say I know exactly what it is to live completely 100% alone, though historically I have lived 100% alone. The first 2 years after my marriage ended, I lived in Mesquite, Texas alone. Slept alone. Ate alone. So I just had a friend today message me about that feeling of loneliness. It's not just being alone, but loneliness. And loneliness can often segue, if we're not careful, into depression. Sometimes in a way we don't call it depression because, again, these D words are often very taboo. Gabe, why these D words? I could have picked death, but I did a whole broadcast on death. Catch it right here on my YouTube page. It goes back to last year. So I've done that. So I could have added 6 D words, death. But a lot of times we don't deal with these words because of the embarrassment. These are terms: drama, depression, desperation, divorce. Even dating at times can become a very taboo subject, especially for those who feel like they are failures. That's why I picked these words. And again, I'm not going to try to do too much here on depression, but let me just say in these last few minutes, let me plead with you. Let me beg you. I'm looking right here at the camera. I beg you. I plead with you. Do not live in isolation when you are feeling, and one of the definitions is ironic for depression is just major sadness. It is basically an ongoing sadness, even when it's not altogether being stimulated. In other words, even though you may consider yourself an upbeat person, when you find yourself constantly feeling this kind of just gnawing sadness, listen to me, it is potentially likely that you are dealing with depression. You probably don't want to call it. I get it. You don't want to call it. No, I'm just sad. I'm just a little down today, but I'm good. But if you're finding a string of days, and when I say a string, don't mean that every single solitary day, all day long, but if you're finding it ain't a cloudy day, but you're just not really feeling it. Okay, you thought it was just exhaustion. You finally got you some good sleep, and you woke up still feeling that gnawing sense. And look, let's just be real. We're in a pandemic. We all know at least one person, and I suspect we know more than one person who has died from this COVID. You can keep calling it a conspiracy if you want to, but we all know at least one, let alone died from leukemia or other ailments, car accidents, and things of this nature. My dear friend, my brother, he may end up watching this. He's talking about an uphill battle. I applaud my dude, man, because somehow he still got a smile on his face. 17-year-old son, no longer in critical condition, we thank God, but was touch and go, almost died in that car accident. I mean, and a host of other things we're not going to get into. But the reality of it is, man, to see my dude laugh, and of course, you know me, I'm a goofball, so, I try to help wherever I can. to see him laugh, man, does my heart good. Because he could have easily, and if you're watching my dude, you know who I'm talking to, I thank God, man, that you didn't go into depression. Some of you have contacted me about loved ones sick and all of these kind of things. And Gabe, I'm holding on by a thread. Look, man, I love you. I tell you all this all the time. I love you. I don't do these broadcasts because I'm tight-witted, or as my son says, or I think I'm super smart. I'm saying things that I think a lot of us really think. I'm just bold enough to get on here and put some leather in my mouth. That's the only difference between me and probably most of you. I'm just willing to get on here and say what a lot of you are thinking. No, you don't agree with everything I say, but I'm just willing to say it. That's it. I'm just willing to say it. And somebody's got to say it. We got to show some kind of care and concern at some point. And because this, I focus on community. Look, man, I'm dead serious. Now, maybe I'll say it for 5 years before somebody goes, maybe I should call Gabe, because every single week he keeps telling us he loves us. Every single week he keeps doing these broadcasts that are hitting close. Hey, I have people messaging me, texting me. Gabe, that hit close to home. Somebody is figuring out I really do give a rip. And if you think I'm bragging, you really don't know me. Watch a few more of these broadcasts and see how consistent I am. And in particular, when it comes to depression. Now, not everybody goes through divorce, gets depressed. Not everybody does. I didn't get depressed, not once. Oh, I was down for a minute, but I didn't get depressed. There's a difference. So please hear me and understand what I'm saying. If you have gone through divorce or a death or deaths or a loss of job that you really didn't see coming in the pandemic, and you were scared and you just thought it might happen and then it happened, and oh my God, hey, just shoot me a message. Maybe you'll feel better if you just message me. Give me an opportunity. You might not even believe in Jesus Christ and him crucified, but at least give me the chance to pray for you. Give me the chance to say something to my God on your behalf. You don't have to believe in him, but I do. Because depression is real. And remember about that whole rash decision? Well, depression will cause people to start feeling desperation. If we don't deal with depression properly, now I'm not going to do a broadcast on this until the 28th, but if we don't deal with depression properly, and not everybody can afford to go to a counselor. And you know me, I avoid calling myself a counselor. I do offer pastoral counseling, but I do not call myself a counselor. And if you need my credentials, I can refer you to people right here on Facebook that I have talked to in some spaces for hours. And let me answer the question now before I get off here. Do I charge? No, of course I don't. Of course I don't. Now, some of you who are actually Christian, you know how this works. So no, I don't charge. Of course I don't. Of course I don't. However, if you feel like, man, Gabe, you've been such a benefit to me, I want to do something for you, then I can give you my Cash App or whatever, Venmo, Zelle, and then you can, whatever you choose to share, that's your business. That's your business. And I say to those who have done it on my broadcast on Tuesday nights all the time, thank you. And for those who are listening, if you feel like what we're doing on Thursdays has been a benefit and you're starting to feel like, man, Gabe, I should do something for you, and you want to do something for me, I don't post that information here. Maybe one of these days I will, maybe I should. I don't. I only do it on my business channel. But if you feel like, Gabe, I want to just bless you with a gift or something, a nominal fee, whatever, you just let me know, and then I'll give you my information directly. But ultimately, I do this for free. I do it because I truly care about the human condition. I told you I'm not political, but I am issue driven. I care about issues. And more importantly, I care about us. I care about what's going on with us. And just as intimate and intense as my conversations are with my son, this is how I am with him. Very intense, very involved. And if he's feeling that intensity and love and passion for him, I want you to feel the same thing. Well, Gabe, we're not your son. I didn't say you have to be. You are a human being that I care about. No, I can't talk to everybody all the time. I'm not suggesting that. But don't excuse yourself from contacting me by saying, well, you might be busy. Well, let me ask you this question rhetorically. Do you know if I'm busy? Well, no, exactly. So don't decide for me that I can't be there for you because you're just deciding that I'm so busy that I can't be there. That's wrong. That's wrong. You don't have a right to do that. You don't have a right to determine my level of busyness and whether or not I can make time for you. Because sometimes all you need is one good old-fashioned listening ear, a couple of words of advice that can get you moving. that can get you stirred again, that can get you back to life, and you're on your way. I have seen it. I have been a product of it. Give me a chance. And if I can't do anything, I can refer you to people who can. I can refer you to people who can. I actually want to say that as well. Thank you for those who have referred people to me, for trusting me to offer the help I can. I let people know up front, hey, I'm not Jesus. I am not a certified counselor. I am a pastor. I've been in ministry for 28, almost 29 years now, as well as around it my entire life. So obviously I've learned some things. I do have education in psychology, yes, but I don't have I am not licensed. So I tell you up front, so don't come trying to sue me, because I'll tell you, you have to make that choice on your own. But especially when you can't afford a counselor, you can't afford a certified person, it doesn't mean you can just go, well, I might as well just sit here like a hobbit in my little house and just cubbyhole and just wilt away with desperation and depression. Don't do that. Please, at least give me a chance to listen. It's a community issue. I know you feel alone. I know you feel isolated. I know you feel like your problems are just bigger than anything you've ever faced, and they probably are right now because you're the only one addressing them. I'm over my time, but I wanted to get this to you. These are the 5 Ds that we addressed over the last 2 weeks. Share this out. Get this to in front of as many people as you possibly can. Let me address this quickly. For those of you who feel like preachers are always talking about money, get off my page. Get off my page. Get off my page. I don't have no time for you. You don't know what it takes for us to do what we do. You have no idea what it takes to sit here. And how dare you judge us? How dare you say, oh, are there preachers out there who want to get rich? Yes, of course. Are there politicians who are about money? Yes. Are there teachers who are just about money? Yes. I was a school teacher. In every walk of life, people in offices who were willing to bend the rules to make money. Every walk of life I've ever been in, I've watched greedy people do things to hoard money and power to themselves. So does it happen among preachers? Absolutely. Does it happen in religious context? Yes. But the notion that somehow we don't need money to survive, but everybody else does, who in the heck are you? So if you don't like that another preacher said something about money, bounce. Get off my page right now. Now, get off my page now. Turn this broadcast off. Get off my page. If you say something nasty to me, I promise you, you don't know me. I promise you don't know me. You'll be blocked so quickly, you won't even get a chance to comment again on anything. And you will disappear from my memory. I will never, I don't care if you're somebody I talk to every other day for the last 5 years, you will be gone from my thinking, period. My father is a pastor and been preaching for over 50 years. And I watched as we grew up in poverty. And yes, he even worked a job. And my mother worked a job. And we were still poor. And he didn't ask anything from the congregation. They chose to give to him. So I don't have any tolerance. I'm sorry. I just don't. None. And I hate to end the broadcast like that, but I got to do it because I've got too many people who want to run their mouth about what they think preachers should get and don't get. And they ain't never stood one day in our shoes at all, ever. Ever. Preachers are some of the most giving people on the planet, including, check me, their life. They're called missionaries. Do your research before you say something. They're called missionaries, and they fly over to war-torn countries. And they, in many cases, don't even get to preach once because their planes get gunned down. Not only are they in danger, but their families are in danger. Oh, this is happening 24/7 all over the world. All over the world, right? Even in this country. People's lives are in danger. So I don't want to hear nothing from you. Just go ahead and wipe yourself clean from my social media platforms altogether. I wish you well in whatever you do. But you and I, we can't talk. we're good. We're good. If you have that sentiment, you have that feeling, my only other thing is keep it to yourself. That's it. And again, I don't make apologies over that. It needs to be said from time to time. I wish you all well. Until next week, this has been Let's Chat. I am your host, Gabe. We'll see you soon.